is the black and white room, like I call it, because Mickey Mouse started out in black and white in 1928 with Steamboat Willie. So there is no color whatsoever, but we have some wonderful original artwork from Steamboat Willie. These are original drawings by iWorks from the film. And he was a fast animator. He did up to 600 drawings a day, this guy called iWorks. And he animated the whole short, Steamboat Willie. Walt was doing story and was doing Mickey's voice and all that. But Up was just a dynamite animator. Turn this way so you can hear me. And we have all kinds of production artwork from all stages into making how you make an animated cartoon. These are layout drawings from early shorts. Some already have camera instructions and camera fielding in there. Some character poses here and there. But this is really what you do before you paint the background. You do a sketch first and set the scene basically. And again, extremely rare pieces. Even some cells down there that I can't believe even survived because these are ancient, you know. And paint on cells doesn't really want to be there. Like with time, it tends to come off. So it's really tricky working with this kind of sensitive art. Moving right along, more drawings and art from the short that actually preceded Steamboat Willie, called Plain Crazy, where Mickey and Minnie are flying. There were two shorts, Plain Crazy and Galloping Gaucho, that preceded Steamboat Willie. But Walt was trying to show them as silent films, and the distributors wasn't really crazy about them. It really wasn't until Steamboat Willie with sound came out that was the big breakthrough for Walt and for Mickey Mouse. So these actually precede Steamboat Willie, these sketches right here. We have some more cells over here on this side. Again, really, really rare. This is a layout drawing that you would do before you paint it. You know? So we have samples of that. And because there was no color involved, we only seeing use of gray for the final film. And they were kept super, super simple, those backgrounds in those days, because the animators and Walt really wanted the character to read in front. So they were kept very, very soft and simple in those days for that reason. Here's some early story sketches, storyboards for a Mickey short film. And this is where Walt got really involved, you know, and because it was story, and he was like a story master. So he would sit in these story meetings and he would take drawings off and ask for new drawings to be put up and kind of shape the whole story for each film. He was super involved in that in those days. So again, this is the Wizard of Oz part of the exhibition, the black and white, and then kaboom, we have color all of a sudden, because Mickey Mouse moved into color. And here are some samples again of layouts, camera instructions, a really rare cell setup. And this is these are two cell setups, background and cell, from the first time Mickey Mouse was in color. And that was, of course, the band concert. The name escaped me for a second. The band concert, the first Mickey Mouse film in color. Animated by Les Clark mostly, one of the 9 old men. I just love the ambiance here because you hear a little music, funky music from the 30s, you know, from the 40s. It kind of guides you through the exhibit. It's really nice, like a nice touch. This is a fun document here that shows or talks about the friendship that Walt Disney had with Charlie Chaplin. Because Walt had lost Oswald the Rabbit, and he didn't want to make the same mistake, and he consulted with Charlie Chaplin because he had been in the business longer than Walt, and he could give him like legal advice, and they really became buddies. So that's what this little section here is all about.
Was there any temptation of them working together?
I don't know if they are story notes or anything like that in meetings, but it's correspondence certainly. There are more than one letter, you know, that are in the Disney archives. This is early animation by Fred Moore, Mickey Mouse Master, who he really was the first one who got out of the rigid type of animation and really loosened up the movement of Mickey by squashing and stretching the body, the hands and all that, and the head, and it just became so much more lifelike. And he was just a kid. He was in his early 20s, which means he was kind of born with this talent, and we all hate him for that. Because us mortals, we have to learn this craft, and it takes years and years. But he was one of those guys who just had it. Here we're showing a pencil test, what we call a pencil test. It doesn't have all the drawings, but just the key drawings. You can see the main motion from a short called Society Dog Show, where Mickey Mouse is trying to show off Pluto as a show dog. But of course, that doesn't go very well, and they're very sad because they're being kicked out. But I love this drawing here by Fred Moore. There's just so much pathos in there, and feeling. It's in this rough doodle. These are from Magician Mickey. Here are more examples of model sheets of early short films. This is a character from a short film called Mickey's Rival, and this character's name is Mortimer, which is kind of interesting because Walt Disney was going to call his mouse Mortimer Mouse, and his wife said, "I don't like it, call him Mickey." He said, "Okay." So she was responsible for the final name, really, but they kept Mortimer for this guy. Mickey's Rival. Kind of fun, the way that worked out. These are some drawings, animation drawings by Frank Thomas, who I had a chance to meet and talk to about Mickey and other things. And when I started to get involved with animating Mickey, I wanted to talk to the animators who were still alive and get some advice. And there were, I think, 4 or 5 that were still alive then. And Frank Thomas was, of course, one of them, and his colleague Otto Johnson. They would just say, well, however you want drawing or animating, just be sure that the audience knows what Mickey Mouse is thinking. So they were really saying, just internalize the character first, his feelings and emotions, and then draw it and animate it. And then I talked to Mark Davis about Mickey Mouse, and he was to say, just respect the anatomical structure of that character. He's not just a cartoony figure. There are knees and there are elbows and there's a neck and all that. And you have to work with that to make it real. So that was Mark Davis's take. And who else did I talk to? There was one more person.
Did you record any of those conversations?
I did not. I interviewed those guys. I have some tapes. So I do have that, but not about Mickey, unfortunately. Oh, and then I talked to Walt Kimball, who was the most eccentric of the animators. And he just says, don't look at the stuff that we do. Just go and animate your own thing. Do your own thing. That was his take on that. Here we have some artwork from new color short film. I love the background art. I mean, look at the painting of this. The rendering is just incredible. This is when the background painters were daring more than in those early shorts where everything was pale in the back. This is the interior room of a boat or like a stage set right there. And you can see that the background colors are now coming to the forefront too. This is a fun cell setup here from Nifty 90s. And then these are pieces of artwork from Mickey and the Beanstalk, which is I think roughly a half-hour film, part of a overall feature called Fun and Fancy Free. But again, just master background. It's just beautifully rendered. I love that one there too. Just the perspective of it and the texture that they were able to put down. It's just amazing. So these things were becoming pieces of art. They were just on the screen for a split second or a few seconds maybe, but individually they're really pieces of art. And over here are some of the last Mickey Mouse drawings that Freddie Moore did before he died in a car accident. in the 1950s. This is for an unproduced short called, it was going to be called Pluto Plays Baseball, and Mickey just has this big cartoony reaction. The drawings are great, you know, and there's still that zest for life that he injects into the character. But the story wasn't working on that film, and Walter said, I don't think it's going anywhere, let's just cancel it. So this never made it through color to final. And this is these are some samples from one of my favorite short, The Brave Little Tailor, which was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Short Film. But Disney's own Ferdinand the Bull won instead. So Mickey could have won this, and should have won. This is a great, great short. Because Frank Thomas animated Mickey Mouse in the first part, where he's talking to the king and Princess Minnie, and he's talking about killing 7 in one blow, and they think it's 7 giants, which of course it isn't. And it's just great, great acting in this film. And then later on, when Bill Titler took over to animate a giant that is trying to smash Mickey, it's just a really, really incredibly well-told story and well-animated film. One of my all-time favorites.
It's called Brave Little Tailor?
Yeah, Brave Little Tailor. One of the last films where Mickey was drawn with these kind of eyes, just black ovals, because after that they opened up and the shape was the same, but this was all painted white, and then there was a small pupil in there, and that became then the new classic Mickey. And Frank Thomas told me this story actually, that they had meetings about this, about changing the eye unit, and it was a big deal. And some people were worried about, well, what will the audience think, you know, with these new eyes? And one of the story guys said, well, maybe we just change one eye at a time, and then the audience won't notice so much. So these guys are just goofing around. No pun intended. Here we're getting into the Mickey Mouse Club, which was super important for the company, for Disney, for Mickey Mouse himself, because this was a must-watch TV show for kids. After school, you ran home, you watched the Mickey Mouse Club. And these are some drawings by Ollie Johnson for one of the title sequences. And these are cells from the title sequences, because the main part of the show was live action. As you know, kids performing, playing music, dancing, all of that. And some samples, some visuals over there. These black and white show just set designs, and I love the style of these sets because they're kind of stylized. Everything is a little crooked, you know. They have sort of their own artsy feel to it.
Didn't Imagineer Harriet Burns work on the sets in the Mickey Mouse Club?
It could be. It could be. Yeah.
Did. I think that was one of her first jobs.
I just love the way that they pushed it so far. You know, it just makes it more fun to watch than putting a real tree there or a real house. You know, everything is kind of playful and stylized. And this is a lot of interactive stuff going on here, where people can actually push buttons and watch certain clips. This is from Get a Hort, which I was not involved with, but my friend Eric Goldberg was. And you can see a mix of 2D animation, actually an homage back to the old black and white films, and then the characters in CG as well. Very, very clever. Almost won the Oscar. And talking about Eric Goldberg, on the left, this can also push certain buttons and see bits of short films, and then they can watch it with the regular soundtrack or switch to Eric Goldberg's and my commentary, because Eric is a big Mickey and history buff, so he came over on one Sunday to my house and we watched all these short films and recorded all of our comments, you know, and Eric knew this and knew that animator who did this and had a hard time with that and why, so that's all in this little box right there. Eric's and my commentary. And I want to point out these cutouts up there. Before we even started with the concept for this exhibit, in terms of what we're going to show and what we're not going to show, and so forth, I wanted this to be part of the exhibit. I wanted drawings in the air, like taking up space. Mickey Mouse running as a drawing, taking up space. And we got these drawings. It's actually a whole circle. Upstairs you can see the whole circle. We got these out of a booklet that was sold at Disneyland when the park opened. It was just how to draw Mickey Mouse. They didn't want to know how to draw Goofy, how to draw Donald. And the last page shows Mickey running as a piece of animation. So we just blew them up, and it's just kind of fun. Drawings that seem real, taking up space, real space. And we're moving on into the Fantasia room. Sorry.
Yours.
By the way, if anybody has any questions, that's what I'm here for. I'm just going to loosely guide you through the exhibit and the pieces, pointing things out. This is actually the original 1940 trailer from Fantasia, all scratchy and vintage looking, but we found a copy of the original trailer that ran in theaters in 1940. And of course it's surrounded by original artwork. We have some continuity sketches for special effects, just loose doodles on how the water and the light effects would work. These are color studies over there. Before they would paint the final backgrounds with the characters, they would actually have these color doodles to explore different ways of how to put this film through color. Excuse me. And these are some of the key animators who work on the film. Freddie Moore drew this set right here. This is actually a cleanup from a Bill Titler scene. Preston Blair with these. And Riley Thompson animated Mickey on top of this rock as he's conducting the universe.
If you had to guess how many different artists are represented in this collection, how could you gather?
Oh, yeah, of course, background artists, layout artists, animators, voice artists. That would be a really tough guess.
Yeah, so it's a combination of like thousands of people.
I would say hundreds.
Hundreds?
Hundreds, yeah. Hundreds. The thing is that about the Sorcerer's Apprentice, when they did storyboards for this film, and some of the artists saw what Mickey was going to do, and that he would have this dream, and he would end up conducting the universe, they actually thought the boss had gone crazy. But after all, this was a cartoon character. He's not going to conduct the universe, and because they just didn't have that vision, this sort of dream that Mickey has of course. And it was also meant to be a comeback from Mickey Mouse, because in those days Donald and Pluto had gotten a little bit more popular with audiences because they were just funnier. They were more slapstick, and so Walt thought, no, I need a vehicle to put Mickey back up there, and they did a Sorcerer's Apprentice. Very, very high budgeted film, because all the special effects in there, and elaborate backgrounds and camera moves, so it was really a high point.
I know you're a big collector, so how much of this is your stuff?
Not all that much. I collect animation drawings, and even then, I don't collect the clean drawings, the cleanups. I collect the roughs. So these are from my collection. The Freddie Moore's drawings are from my collection. Because the rough drawings are actually the animator's drawings. So you talk cleanup, it's an assistant who traced that rough drawing one more time. And I'm interested in the thought process that the animator had. So that's what I'm really interested in. Even though these are very pretty too, of course, final versions of the animation. Then we have more color studies over here. Yeah, they did a lot of color continuity for this before they settled on the final colors. And very gothic looking, background right there. piece of the dungeon. But they were such students in those days. They watched German expressionistic films like Nosferatu and some of those, those gothic. Made it even into a Mickey Mouse short. As crazy as that might sound, but they were screening films from all over the world, studying them and being influenced by them. And then we get into one of my favorite sections, because this is all about drawing Mickey. And I'd like to think that if a kid comes here, like we're saying, 5, 6, 7 years old, and doesn't want to draw, you have no business being here. Because this is so stimulating, I would think and hope, And people do, they already have, because you can grab a piece of paper right there with some instructions and draw your own version of Mickey. And you can either take it home or you can put it here and leave it in the museum. So that already has happened. There's some really involved fun. There's Mickey traveling and a suitcase and all kinds of stuff, sunglasses. So yeah, this is really fun. And this is the Mickey actually that we see up there running. We took it from this little booklet on how to draw Mickey Mouse. So these are the same drawings, just smaller. I just love the effect of that.
Now, I've heard that some of even the 9 old men found Mickey difficult to draw. They said that not everybody could draw Mickey.
It wasn't so much drawing him, it's just finding business for him, finding stories with him. Because he became so nice. In the earlier films, he was a little naughty, and he could do stuff that became more seduced over the years, and then they found it really tough to find business for him, story business. That's why Donald and Goofy kind of took over, because those guys maintained their slapstick quality. So in that way, they gravitated more toward those other characters, and Mickey was just handled by just a few. And then let's move on to next here. Each part of a bunch of different areas. We got some vintage merchandise in here, which I love, even though Mickey looks a little funky sometimes, but that's what I love about it. Because whoever the company was, they had their own interpretation of what Mickey looked like, even though they got guidelines from the studio, but once they were manufactured and all that, printed or whatnot, there were some funky looking Mickeys that came out of it, but that's the charm of it, I think.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of what you said. It came out of...
merchandising.
Oh, merchandising.
That each company and each country really almost had their own version of Mickey Mouse, even though they got guidelines from the company. But once they carved them out of wood or printed them or whatever, the different versions emerged, and they can end up looking a little bit funky, but that's the charm of it, I think. And then we got Mickey overseas, Mickey worldwide, some posters, magazine covers from France, other European countries. And I think Mickey Mouse was the first cartoon star where merchandise was applied to that extent, as you can see that on the floor. But it wasn't an important revenue that they needed, because for the qualities of film that they wanted to do, because this was the time when the world was going to features, we needed money, we needed lots of money. And the films brought in a certain revenue, but merchandise almost brought in more. So the merchandising of Mickey was super important in order to do all these other projects like feature films. This comes from a French carousel. And you couldn't really ride Mickey, but I believe you could hang on to his tail in the back. But this was like on a merry-go-round carousel. And I don't know what the other characters were like on there, but Diane Disney Miller purchased this. She found this actually here in this country and purchased it, but it comes from France.
And how about this one?
This is a store display from a London department store. I don't know if it was done around Christmas time. They have a tendency to do these spectacular displays around Christmas time. So it might have been. And this even was working mechanically. When you look over here, you can see a rod where Pluto's head would be moving, Mickey Mouse would move back and forth, she would probably wave her umbrella. So this is a very involved gadget, this whole thing. But there's something so absolutely wonderful vintage about this.
Yeah.
And I think this is the original color. They didn't restore it or repaint it. This is the original paint. Absolutely love this piece. And it took a lot of people to get it up here.
What year was that from?
Manpower. This would be early 30s.
Wow.
So these are the things that Kate came and put together for
He
the
got
art
involved,
stores
yeah,
at Christmas time.
He was involved in anything merchandise, as you know. You know, he was the guy, and really pioneered that whole part of the business.
I'd read about it and talked about it on a show, but I had no idea how grand they were.
Some of them, yeah. Some of them went all out.
Is this a bigger one? Are there, in terms of size?
A bigger one than this.
Yeah.
There might be other pieces. We don't really know because some of them were done overseas and never made it back here. But yeah, this is one of the biggest pieces I've seen of this type.
Do you know what store it was displayed in?
I'm not sure. Was Harrods around there at that time?
Yeah.
Might have been Harrods. You know. And this is a painting which I absolutely love because it's so unusual. Gottfried Helnwein, I think is his name. He's a Swiss artist, and this comes from the local Museum of Modern Art here in San Francisco, and it looks like almost like a photograph of an old Mickey toy that we would see way back there, but it's an oil painting, and it has some of the naughtiness of the early Mickey Mouse shorts, so he was definitely influenced by that. It's such an unusual but dominating piece because of its size. I think it's fantastic. Posters, international markets.
You said it looked like a picture of what?
Of one of those toys here.
Oh, okay.
You know, you see right here in black and white.
Yeah, for sure.
Like he almost had that in front of him and then painted it big. Voice-wise and animation-wise. And this I think is the first. Nobody has ever done this in terms of presenting Mickey's voices, and there really have been only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over all these decades. So Walt, of course, was the first voice. He came about for 15 years plus. So let's listen to Walt. You know Mickey Mouse? He's talking to a bear who's trying to eat him, and he's trying to talk himself out of it. And then let's just go a little bit later. Wayne Allwine, who I knew very well, because he was working at the studio around when I started. That's it from the Christmas Carol.
Mr. Scrooge. Speaking of work, Mr. Scrooge.
And you can hear it's pitched just a little bit lower, you know. So each artist has their own take on Mickey.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're so kind. I will, sir. And a hold on, sir. I mean, a Merry Christmas to you, sir.
So it went from Walt Disney to Jimmy MacDonald, who was actually most of the time at the studio a sound effects artist. And then he kind of passed on the torch to Wayne, who we just heard. Then Brett Ivan does the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse for the Disney Channel. which is a CG series, and then the recent 2D Mickey Mouse short that are running on the Disney Channel, they're like short shorts, is by Christopher, last name Greek. Can't pronounce that. But he only does those Disney Channel shorts that were shown recently. So not many people have done Mickey, just a handful. And him just recently, the last one. And then we get to not all of the animators, because many people animated Mickey Mouse, most of these, but like the main ones. So starting out with the old generation, Up Iwerks, of course, who kind of shaped the character with Walt. Then Les Clark, who later on became kind of a specialist for Minnie too. He was very good at Minnie Mouse. Fred Moore, who took the character to graphic new heights and softened the motion of Mickey Mouse and added like the ultimate appeal to Mickey. Incredible animator. Frank Thomas, we talked about him earlier, who animated him in The Brave Little Tailor and a few other shorts. And Ollie Johnston. It's just a sample of his animation from the pointer. We just heard Walt's voice for that short. And that's a drawing from the Mickey Mouse Club later. Walt Kimball, who can't help it but do crazy stuff, as you can see on the bottom there. That man was not able to have a normal thought, ever. He had to show off, and it bothered the other animators a little bit, you know. They say, you are, the other guys would say, you are such a talent, you draw paint beautifully. Why do you also have to be a clown at the same time?
Is that Mickey as E.T.?
It is, yeah. This is like the crazy model sheet, you know, like what not to do with Mickey. Too tall, too short, too tutu, to everything, too abstract, you know, and so he created that.
Too realistic.
Yeah. And then we have a few animators from my generation, so I was involved, and couldn't find a photo with me doing Mickey because that scar there. You know, good enough. But I was involved in Prince of the Pauper. Before that, a little bit on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I worked on some of the cameo scenes with him on that. And then Eric Goldberg. Oh yeah, I also was involved in Runaway Brain, one of my favorite Mickey shorts that I worked on, because it's so naughty when he turns into a monster. Loved doing that. And then Eric Goldberg, who was the key animator for Get a Horse, which was nominated for an Oscar. And then Mark Henn, early on during the 80s, was the key animator for Mickey's Christmas Carol. So just a few from my generation. And then we have this little section of Mickey in comics, because he was and is super popular in comics, particularly in Europe. They love Mickey Mouse comics still. And we have a few panels, original panels by Floyd Gottfredson, who animated first, but then drew the comic strip for Mickey for like decades, for like 4 decades. So these are all his. And up on top, the color ones are from Good Housekeeping magazine. What Good Housekeeping way back would do is they would each time a new Disney short would come out, they would print these beautiful watercolors telling just in a few panels the story of that Mickey Mouse short. And we have some of those panels up there. And over there. And sometimes these things come up for auction. They go for a fortune, these watercolors. I mean, we're talking tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And more, even. So that finishes our downstairs tour. So let's move on up and see more.